Hi, and welcome to the Simplicity Zen Podcast. Our guest today is longtime practitioner, Zen retreat leader, and professor of peace and reconciliation studies at the University of Maine, Hugh Curran. Thank you for being here today with us.
Okay, you're
Yeah,
welcome. Thank you.
great.
Thank
So,
you for the
Hugh,
invitation.
so one reason we really wanted to talk to Hugh is he's a very long time practitioner. Did you say 45 years?
To be exact, 60 years.
60 years, boy.
I was
And
quite.
and and you've had a lot of touch points of a lot of pivotal, kind of moments and pivotal teachers throughout history. So I'm super interested in hearing your history of your practice and getting some insight into what early Zen practice was like in our country. Um, just to get started, could you tell us a little bit where you grew up and like what your childhood
Well,
was like? And
yeah, I grew up in Ireland, in a Gaelic-speaking area of West Donegal, Ireland, and
uh-huh.
we immigrated to Canada. My family, my father worked in the Arctic as a contractor,
Uh-huh.
and he also worked in mining
Hmm.
in northern Ontario, and then on the Arctic, and then northern Alberta, the Athabasca area. So we
Hmm.
kind of moved around with him, and then uh, I played sports quite a lot. Was a I could say my sports self applause. You could say I was an all star in Alberta and in Edmonton in basketball, and then I
Hmm.
was invited to Saint FX University in Nova Scotia to play, and I played for a year before I hurt my back. Then I went down to the U.S. and I worked for a little while, year and a half, as a statistician in a publishing company.
Hmm.
I went to Temple University for a couple of years, and I met Bernard Phillips there, who was my advisor and mentor, and
Hmm.
he was the co-founder of the Studies Society, Zen Studies Society in New York.
Okay.
Um, I actually just wrote an article a couple of years ago. They asked me to write an article about early times and stages of the New York Zendo Zen Studies Society, and I wrote about knowing Yasutani Roshi and
Hmm.
meeting him in Temple University. Bernard Phillips was had brought Yasutani Roshi over, invited him, and he became the kind of head of the Zen Studies Society.
Hmm.
And he ran retreats, 7-day retreats, and I was invited on the retreats. One of them was at a Quaker center, and that was sort of my beginning in Zen. So I did 7-day, several years with him of these 7-day retreats, 2 or 3 a year while I
Hmm.
was studying. And
By him, you mean Yasutani, or
yes, and
yeah?
then he asked me to help edit a book that he wrote on the practice of Zen.
Uh huh.
And myself and my sister worked on editing that book, which is still around.
What's the
We
book
call,
called?
we call it the Black Book on Zen. I even forget the actual
Uh huh.
name of it is
Yeah,
Zen
I wasn't
Studies.
aware of this. I'd love to track it down.
Yeah, I'd have to send you the name. I have it in my little library.
Uh
Anyhow, I then spent. I practiced with Bernard Phillips, and we opened up a Zendo in Philadelphia. It was really the first Zen center of Philadelphia, and it was an extension of the Zen studies in New York.
huh.
And then that's when Bernard invited Yasutani Roshi to come to give a series of lectures, and he gave, I think, about maybe 15, 12 or 15 lectures, and the book was based upon his lectures. That
Hmm.
was big influence on me, and then attending the retreats with him,
Hmm.
usually at estates that were rented outside of New York. We were there,
Hmm.
and then at the Quaker Center in outside of Philadelphia, and
Hmm.
so went from there. The Vietnam War period. I went to with some friend. I went to Canada, returned to Canada because I was being they were saying threatening me with induction. So
were you a U.S. citizen at this point?
no, I wasn't.
A green
I
card?
was I was a resident, and
Huh.
they claimed they had a right
Uh-huh.
to
Are
bring
you,
me.
are you a
Involved.
Canadian? Are you a Canadian citizen
Yeah, I'm a Canadian citizen,
and
but that
Irish
doesn't.
as well, or
I'm an Irish citizen as well.
yeah, yeah. Uh,
I actually got my American citizenship as well as that because my mother was American when I was born in Ireland. So
I see.
very triple citizen.
Yeah.
Uh, so
Could, if
anyhow,
I could interject real quick.
yeah.
So going back to the childhood, were you raised religious at all?
Yes, very religiously Catholic, very devotional,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
attending devotions on Lenten periods daily, even as a child.
And did you were genuinely a believer?
Oh yes, I mean the Irish system at the time, you didn't say you didn't have any choices.
Uh-huh.
You believed, and yes, it was very embedded in me.
Hmm.
Christ as a was a kind of a deeply embedded figure of mostly of the sense of suffering, I would say.
Uh-huh.
Uh, so yes, that became a focal point for me early. Then I rejected that later, and when I came into Zen,
Uh-huh.
but then I had to face that years later, and I would ask for Yasutani, and I asked Chinese teacher that I had what his advice would be under these circumstances, and they said, "Well, treat Christ as a great bodhisattva. He's there to help."
Hmm.
And so that helped to reduce my sense of being separating myself from my childhood.
Hmm.
So
Did
that
you so when you were younger, before you kind of lost the faith, did you would you feel God's presence or any sense of Holy Spirit or any sort of like what we could call mystical or spiritual experiences? I'm curious if you had any early seeds that kind of
yes, there
yeah.
were. Very much relying my cause my it was there was a lot of prayer. Give you an idea that when we came to Canada, my father would insist on when he was back home from the Arctic or working in the mines, would insist that we kneel down and say the Rosary in Gaelic every night. So
Hmm.
that gives you an idea of the fervidness of the beliefs that we were raised on.
Uh-huh.
And yes, there were a lot of, you could say, apparitions or visions that would occur,
Hmm.
and a feeling of compassion for other people, other beings who are suffering. That was very strong in my upbringing,
Hmm.
and probably overwhelming, probably to the point that it was more than I could bear at times. So, but it certainly was a big motivation in becoming involved with Zen, because you first encounter it with long retreats. There's a lot of suffering and pain you have to endure.
Right.
That certainly was very good to have that background in
Hmm.
my Irish Catholic upbringing.
Did you have any sometimes in Zen they talk about great doubt, you know, kind of core questions or driving beliefs. Did you have any of those as a kid or a teenager or college student that maybe later kind of set the seeds for being interested in practicing Zen?
Yes, I would say yes. There's the great doubt was definitely set in motion very early in my life,
Uh-huh.
and it came to the forefront in Zen. One great thing about the practice of Zen, it brings the questions
Hmm.
that are unconscious or semi-conscious to the conscious mind, and I think then it's a sort of a reinforcing circle where the practice has to do with facing into suffering, and at the same time underneath you feel that you're dealing with a buried sense of pain and suffering. At first it was individual, but I think what Zen helped me do is to see it as universal
Hmm.
rather than as a individual state of mind. So
Could you articulate what your great doubt was?
Articulate what did you say? The sense
What
of
your great doubt was, like, if you could put it in one sentence, my great doubt
well,
was.
in a way, you could say the doubt when I given a koan by Yasutani, it was a koan mu, which I last week, 2 weeks ago, I just gave a talk on that to
Mhm.
a group. But anyhow, the koan mu is you're trying to awaken the doubt.
But
But
how about before Zen practice? Like, was there any? Because some people are like, why am I here? Why do I suffer?
yeah,
Why?
well,
What is reality?
yes, yes, all of that was very much in
Uh-huh.
evidence in my all through my life, I would say.
Hmm.
But what my teachers in Zen would say, the Mu Koan can coalesce all those questions into one experience,
Hmm.
which was kind of a driving experience in my life, kind of awakening that I had with Yasutani Roshi.
Hmm.
But I'd say, yes, early on it was more amorphous. It didn't have any clear focus. It's just a sense that war and hatred and all of these things seemed to pervade the atmosphere at that time when I
Hmm.
lived in Philadelphia with going on, demonstrations about the war and so on. It
Hmm.
just on having meeting friends coming back who had suffered, some were lost in the war and so on, and it was just a kind of pervasive sense. That and the troubles in the north of Ireland, which were also coming into it, were with even relatives involved in the IRA and so on. All of this was a very persuaded me to stay in the practice
Hmm.
and keep focusing my mind. And then, of course, after I joined Philip Kaplow. He invited me in Rochester to join him as his first monk and his head monk then for
Hmm.
5 years. That leading others as a head monk really became a great teaching in itself. And he would ask me to to sit with people who are new people and give them answer their questions. So
Hmm.
that was a teaching experience. But what it was it's taking something very amorphous and generalized pain and suffering and
Hmm.
focusing it down into a laser beam, you could say, of a question.
That makes sense. Do you remember the first time you heard about Zen? Like how it was introduced to you as something that you become aware of, even?
Yes, it was with Bernard Phillips, who was just returned from Japan and had written a book on Zen, and he was the chairman of the religion department at
Hmm.
Temple University. He was my advisor,
Hmm.
and I said, well, all I'm interested in is awakening. I said, I want to be enlightened, and he says, well, you should come to this retreat I'm inviting over Yasutani Roshi, and I'll arrange for you to attend the retreat.
And so
So
you hadn't read any like D.T. Suzuki or Alan Watts or anything like that prior.
yes, I actually did. There was a book that I was reading. But I'm trying to remember a French psychologist,
Uh huh.
and I'm trying to remember his name. I've barely gone, but I
Oh,
must
is
have
it
read it over 3 times.
was it the Empty Mirror or something like that?
No, no, I knew the author of that one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was a friend of mine.
Oh yeah, he wasn't
Um,
French. Was he Dutch or
yeah,
was
he
he
was
French?
Dutch. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
Jan Willem van de Bettering. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
No, that came much, much later, and he was
Hmm.
my neighbor actually in Maine,
Oh,
and
interesting.
we attended retreats together
Uh huh.
with Walter Noack. So, yeah, so that was um, the issue of Ben. So, and his last name was B something. I'm
Hmm.
forgetting it.
Okay.
Of the book, it was a more psychologically based, but the Zen. It was a Zen based upon a psychological interpretation. So
Hmm.
it was very influential on me. And so when I mentioned to Bernard Phillips about it,
Hmm.
and he says, "Well, you should come to this retreat," and that's really how I got
Yeah. Had you done any
pulled in.
meditation on your own prior to that session?
No, believe it or not, I went into a 7-day retreat without ever having crossed my legs or sat down. So,
I almost did that. My first Zen experience was a half day sitting,
yeah.
which wasn't that bad, and then my second Zen experience was a 7 day session, which was a nightmare.
Yes, they are nightmares, and I
Yeah.
went through. In fact, it was a very convinced me that that it brought what I was searching for was, you could say, a sense of happiness or a sense of inner peace, and what I faced was suffering. So
Yeah.
I crossed legs, and I also had suffered a very bad injury in my athletic career, which had prevented me from pursuing my athletic career. So between my back and my knees, I was in agony for these 7-day retreats. So
Hmm.
when I went to 4 in a row of them, but one thing that I would say to myself, there must be something to this practice because it's awfully painful.
Yeah.
There's a lot of suffering in it. So that actually convinced me that it wasn't any falseness in it. It was a very true practice
Hmm.
because you had to face yourself and face all your own inner pain as well as the physical pain. So yeah.
That makes sense. Did you so tell me about your initial meeting of Yasutani Roshi, what kind of what the events were and what your impression was of him?
Well, that was at the it was at this Quaker Center, which
Hmm.
is a retreat center outside of Philadelphia, and that was the first time I met him. No, it was. Sorry, I take that back. It wasn't. The first time I met him was when he gave the series of lectures,
Hmm.
and what I saw, of course, of him was a tiny little figure sitting up in front of me, and about 15 or 20 other people in a class, and saying, and then he had a pretty substantial monk with him. Yes, his name was. He actually became the head of the New York Zen
Is
Studies
is this
Society.
Edo Shimano?
Edo Roshi, yeah.
Yeah.
So Edo was his head monk,
Uh-huh.
and Tai-san, we called him Tai-san, and he was fairly young, and we became friends. And I helped him actually with editing Yasutani's lectures. So seeing this tiny figure sitting in front of me, uh, I wasn't particularly impressed, but I was impressed with the vigor with which he presented his talks.
He didn't speak
Everything,
English, right? It was translated.
yes,
Who
but
did the translation?
Tai-san did the translation.
Uh-huh.
Tai-san, Ido Roshi, had spent 2 years in Hawaii
Hmm.
with Aiken Roshi, so he had learned to pick up his English there. And it wasn't great English, but he was pretty proficient enough to be able to translate. So he did the translation. So that's the way we listened to the lectures, and then doing the editing, I reread the book, and I've kept it ever since. I've used it in my own teachings, and
Hmm.
I gave a number of classes in course in philosophy in the philosophy department in Maine on Zen. So I used his book quite a bit on that score.
Hmm. Did
So,
so did you have Dokusan? Do you guys what do you guys call it? Dokusan or
yeah.
yeah? Do you have
Uh,
Dokusan with Yashitani that first?
yes, I'd have 3 doksans a day.
Uh-huh. What
Uh,
instructions did he give you initially?
and he just gave me the mu koan to work on. So
Really, even so, no counting breaths initially or anything like that. Just
no,
right into
nothing
Mu.
like that. He just said go right to the mu koan. He says
Uh,
you're ready. So
okay. What
we worked on that.
I mean, did he ask you anything about like out breaths or like
No,
it was
none
just a
of that.
vibe? Yeah.
That's he was strictly a koan teacher.
And how did he tell you to work on Mu, if you can remember?
Well, um, he wasn't so much. Philip Kapleau was much more explicit on using mu, but Yazutani, it was just when I come in with a response
Hmm.
in Doksan, uh, and then I would, after the second or third, maybe the third retreat, I began having real insights, and he would just say, keep going, don't
Hmm.
stop. And but he said my mind would wander. He says, no, keep right back on mu all the time. Whenever your mind wanders, you're thinking of something else. Put all of that, even your pain in your legs. He says, put that all into mu.
Did he give you instruction to use your hara or tendon or anything
Oh
like that?
yeah, everything was based on Hara. He was a
Yeah.
Hara guy. That's
Yeah.
no doubt. The Tanden, and later we'd call it the Tanden, but the Japanese, it was the Japanese Soto was the Hara.
Hmm.
So
And how what was the vibe in Dokusan? Was he like intense or was he relaxed? Did you get a like intuitive sense
So
of spaciousness from him or anything like that?
he was he's very interesting. Very little figure, but very focused, and very energy was just there. And he would just look at you, and you feel he's totally present to you right there. And so it really was eye to eye and nose to nose almost. Only about he liked to have you sit very close to him, so it was only 2 or 3 feet apart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So that was.
what about his energy or his vibe or anything like that? Was
Oh
that?
yeah, no, he was superbly energized. He did not let up on his energies. He
Uh-huh.
now when he was giving his lectures, of course, it was a different. Then he would be energized in when he'd get enthusiastic about topic. Then he would get energized. But in Duksan, he was total energy.
Uh-huh.
So it was a totally at total total focus and total energy. So
Mhm.
that was the big motivation to keep going. I mean, because you'd leave the Doksan and you were really motivated not to slack off and to keep your attention. And no matter what, I'd have to sit seiza on my heels because of my back,
Mhm.
and actually that was very good for me because I was able to refocus my energies in my body, and rather than getting it dispersed, my thoughts getting dispersed.
Was Taizan the hall monitor? Like
Yeah,
who?
Tai-san was the head monk, so
Yeah.
he was the monitor. He
Uh,
would apply the kisaku pretty regularly, and on me he really hit me pretty hard with that kisaku.
uh,
I had to use the kisaku with Philip Kapleau for years, so
mhm.
he really taught me how to use the kisaku.
Yeah.
Uh,
I've heard some accounts of early Yasutani sessions where people would actually moo out loud. Was that happening at all?
yes, he would. He didn't encourage it the way Philip Kapleau encouraged it, but he did encourage it at certain times.
Hmm.
Uh, moo, 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 that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That was that would be done at certain, like in the evening before bedtime or something. He'd like an
Uh-huh.
hour before and come in and give a talk and be
Uh-huh.
translated, and then he'd say, use all your energy, say it aloud, that sort of thing.
Uh-huh. And so you mentioned you had some insights. I think maybe you said your third retreat. Like, can you
Yes,
describe those insights at all?
yes. Well, it was a Kensho experience, and
Uh-huh.
he said you've had a deep flavor. He called it the deep flavor of a Kensho, and he
Uh-huh.
would check me and give me all kinds of other checking koans, and
Uh-huh.
then things like how tall is Mu, how wide is Mu, how long is Mu here, is Mu there, and Mu,
Uh-huh.
keep you on you until you could express that, the sense of Mu being in everything around you, that
Hmm.
there was no separation between you and the experience. So that
Hmm.
was his ability to keep you on your, I mean, you had to be right in there. Now later on, I lost that for a while, and he says, go back and sit more. You've lost your focus,
Uh-huh.
and so I'd have to keep working on it. Sometimes a whole day to become able to come back to him and say, and then he'd give me the checking questions again.
Uh-huh.
He said, you're going to have to do a lot of work to make this at the end of the retreat, to make this your everyday practice, because you're losing it. You have it and then you lose it. Then you have it and you lose it. You have to keep it, keep at
Can
it,
you
and that's going to be your life.
can you describe what the initial insight into Mu was like for you? Like,
Well, it's just what I said. It's when you're in the experience, everything is moved. There's
uh-huh.
no separation between you. If somebody says, and you're looking at, uh, he's looking at your hand. What is that? What is that? I said, moo. What is that? Moo. Look at the ceilings. What is that? So
Hmm.
he's checking you to be sure your experience is a total oneness with it, and that oneness expanded to everything around you. So there was no separation of myself, Mu, and the environment around me. It was
Did
all.
you did your initial breakthrough happen on the cushion or was it kind of random? Like,
No, no, it was always on the cushion, and it was verified by other teacher later on, but it
uh,
was right on the cushion,
uh,
and and years later it could occur. The experience could happen in bed, lying down, or walking or working, and so on. But at that time, it really needed full concentration on the cushion.
Uh-huh.
And a full immersion. It was actually through pain. My legs and my back were in such agony that he told me when I asked him about it, he says, well, experience Mu as your pain. That is what you are experiencing it as that pain, and then pouring it into like one-pointedness, getting a one point in front of you, just one point. Hold your attention on the one point, but use the pain to deepen that one-pointedness. So,
What when you first got inside of mood, did you notice if there's any relationship to the identity of Hugh?
yeah, no, that all disappeared. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's no Hugh, there's no Yasutani, there was no Tyson. It was all there.
How
And
about insight
Tyson,
into the nature of suffering? Was there any?
yeah, well, of course, that was enormous. It was actually the sense of enormous relief that I
Mm-hmm.
could finally understand suffering as a condition, as a experience, that the whole universe was suffering, but it was also not. It wasn't pain. It was just the pure experience.
Mm-hmm.
So that there was no sense of me, Hugh, and suffering. It was just, but the suffering became pleasure and joy at the same time. This is a curious thing.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no, we tend to say suffering and then we say joy as if there are two states, but
Mm-hmm.
really they can also be one state. And so the experiencing of it, there's the relief of experiencing is so enormous
Mm-hmm.
that you just feel the after experience is pure joy,
Mm-hmm.
and as if you have discovered something that has always been in you, and it's always present. And that you can achieve it. If you can achieve it once, you can achieve it again and again, which is to me the experience. So
And did you? My understanding is during that era, sometimes some of those teachers they would explicitly acknowledge those who kenshowed during a retreat at the end of the retreat in a ceremony. Was that happening at all?
no, he said he would, but he said it's escaping you, so you have to hold it better. He said you've had great insight, and you have had you've had real kensho, but he wouldn't publicly, he did not, he said, I can't publicly acknowledge it because you're not able to keep your mind fully there all the time, which is what he wanted. So
Uh-huh.
he did not, he acknowledged it to me and to Tyson, but not.
But in general, would he hold that ceremony for some people?
Yes, he did. In fact, when I sent in a picture to the New York Zendo 2 years ago, I wrote a 2-page article on being with Yasutani, and they published it in the 50th. And there were 2 pictures of the group, and he was one of the people there. He had up in front with him, and he acknowledged her as having passed the Koan Mu and so on, having Kensho. So I felt that at the time that I had achieved an enormous experience. I was so grateful, but I did not feel that I couldn't sustain it enough for him to warrant making it a public acknowledgement.
Interesting.
Later on it did, because another teacher did write it out as a formal acknowledgement of the Mu, coming to a Mu understanding.
So after you did the checking questions, did you move on to any miscellaneous koans
Yes, I did, and
with Yasutani or with subsequent teachers?
no, with Yasutani for a while, but then I went. There were so many things going on in my personal life with the being inducted into the military and all kinds of other issues that I went to Canada, and then a year later. 6 months later, I joined Philip Kapleau in Rochester, which is just across Lake Ontario from Toronto, and I thought I knew I had to work a lot of things out. That there's so much confusion in my mind about not only my own religion, Catholicism, but confusion about the problems with Northern Ireland, that I felt I should be over there trying to do something, and the problems with Vietnam. Anyhow, Yeah, as a Philip Campbell, it allowed me to really spend all day, every day, going to 7-day retreats every month, and sitting there all the time, and having a room right next to him. To Kaplo, I was able to get up with him and do his Zen and do some yoga and do this morning and night for 6 days a week. And so I was 12 hours a day. My days were 12 hours for a day for 5 years. So I was very involved with
Hmm.
sitting.
And then, so was Capello your second teacher, or was there anyone in
Yes,
between?
I told him that I was formerly a student of Yasutani, and he was formerly a student of Yasutani. So
Hmm.
I told him I'd rather see us as being kind of more brothers
Hmm.
in terms of Yasutani. But then he had a fallout with Yasutani Roshi,
Right.
and later on, I had to. He wanted to me to make a decision that he wanted to formally. I was informally his student, of course. I had Doksan with him and
Right.
saw him regularly, and he considered me a student. But then, toward the end, I got married, and he said, "Well, if you want to stay here, I'd rather you were publicly acknowledge me
Uh-huh.
as your teacher." I just could not. I came in to see him twice, and on the verge of saying it, I just could not bring myself to say it. I just did not see him in that light. I saw him more as a fellow practitioner rather
Uh-huh.
than as a teacher. So he never, I never, I felt he was a teacher in many ways, but not in a deeply spiritual way, the way I had with Yasutani. So I
Hmm.
did not take him then as formally as a teacher.
What what can you tell me as kind of someone watching it happening? What could you say about the break between Yasutani and Capello? Like, what insights do you have about that? I've heard
Well,
different stories.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, I say I'm the only witness because I was there when it
Uh-huh.
happened,
Uh-huh.
and Philip Kaplan, I was the only one he could talk to at the time because there were no other monastics. So when Yazatani came to give a retreat, we attended it, and I could see that there were problems going on between the two. And after the retreat, 7-day retreat, I actually was, sort of like an attendant to Yazatani. I would give him his meals and his tea, and I could see that he was
Hmm.
acting that he was not happy with Philip Kapleau. And there were reasons. I think the three pillars of Zen were a problem. He never acknowledged, Kapleau never acknowledged all the people who helped him and so on.
That was an
So
issue.
a big issue, yes,
Uh-huh.
because it indicated to the Japanese mentality of the time, if you don't show that appreciation, that then it's the ego has entered in. So
Hmm.
they thought of Philip Kapleau as allowing his ego to get in. Also, he was not allowed. When I was with him, he was not allowed to give doksan, only to give to see people informally rather than formally. So Kapleau took that upon himself, and Yazatani didn't like that. He hadn't given him that right. And then we took Yazatani to the airport in Rochester, and Kapleau came out kind of white faced and very like a white. He was like a sheet. I knew there was something wrong. I said, "What happened?" And he said, "Well, Yazatani just told me that I'm no longer his student. That he's severing the relationship, and he would send me a letter." And then about 2 weeks later, a letter came from Japan, and it said that I have burnt a copy of this letter, and it indicates that you are no longer a student of mine.
Hmm.
And Kapleau then asked me, I know you're a student of Yazutani's. Did you want to stay on? I mean, you're my only monastic right now, and you're the head. Anybody else comes, you will be the head monastic. And I said, I thought to myself, I have no place else to go. I said, I'll stay on, and I will do whatever I can to help out. And we kind of built a zendo together, you could say. We had a
Hmm.
big fire occur a year later, and I had to be in charge of all the construction, and
Hmm.
30 monastics that joined us. I was asked to oversee their activities and set up schedules and so on.
Hmm.
So I say what I did. A friend of mine later, who was a psychologist, later told me, he says, when I described the issues with him, And he says, you what you did is you married the Zendo.
Hmm.
You weren't you were a student, but you were immersed in the Zendo, the concerns of the Zendo, the building of it, the rebuilding of it, and all the things to do with organizing. And you were married to that. And because I told him that when I left, it was a her actually,
Hmm.
I had this tearing apart feeling of being torn inside, internal,
Hmm.
and emotionally tearing. And she said, you've just gone through a divorce. That's what happens in a divorce.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
that makes sense. Did I have a couple questions. So did how far did Capello get into the Kwan curriculum before the severing? Do you know?
well, I was told I actually kept up my friendships with his head students down in New York because they were
Oh,
friends of mine. And they told me that Yazatani told them that Kaplo had gone one third of his way through the koans. And so he did not have, was not given the rights to teach and was not given the rights to
uh-huh.
have Duksan, but he took those rights upon himself.
And so one third, would that be maybe Blue Cliff record, or what do you?
Well, I think so. He didn't specify
Yeah.
exactly which step.
Uh-huh.
Um, I think it was the gateless barrier
Okay.
koans, the Mumon Khan that he went through.
Uh-huh. And when I'm curious, when you went through the Moomin Con, you went through them with Capello, is that correct?
No, I went through some with him,
Uh-huh.
but I went through more with Ruben Habito, who was
Okay.
and then with Walter Noack. I went through some with Walter Noack, who I
Uh-huh.
became a student of Walter Noack in Maine. I
Uh-huh.
was with Jan Willem and Van de Bettering and myself and some others were students of his.
Uh-huh.
So
When when you went through these koans with the various teachers, did you? I'm curious. I'm kind of curious. This is getting a little nerdy, but would you just do the koan, or would you do the verse as well? Like, would you? You know what I mean? Like,
you just work on the koan. The verse was given. You just do the koan,
hmm.
and you would give your response.
Hmm.
I was never I was not really great on koan, so I never advanced far. There were just too many. I had too many other issues going on, and when I joined the University of Maine, especially, I had to devote so much time to
Uh-huh.
organizing conferences and doing scholarly works, and that I just the koans seemed at that time irrelevant in a way to my life. So I just sort of set them aside.
Hmm.
I've come back to them again, but I
Hmm.
set them aside at that time. Too many other
Did you
issues
make?
have faced
Did
in
you
my life.
maintain a daily zazen practice and go to retreats and so forth?
Do I still? You mean?
No, at the time when you were like kind of
Yes, yes.
yeah.
I would actually, for with Walter Noack, for instance, I would go to. We'd get up at 4 o'clock, and we would kind of. My wife would. We had a little cabin nearby, and I had a young son, so I'd get up at 4 and go join them at 5 o'clock for. I think it was 2 hour sittings every morning and 2 hours at night for. These were kind of retreat. 3 months on, 3 months off practice that we had in the was the Rinzai tradition.
Hmm.
So that was what we did. Very kind of it had its own intensity, but
Hmm.
at the time I was also involved with with the university, so I'd have to do that in the early morning and come back and late at night, and then do my involvement with
Yeah.
that during the day. I also had to find work. I got teaching assistantship, so I was able to get a small income
Hmm.
to help to support my family, and then my wife had to go out and work as well. So we had, just surviving,
Right.
and then growing the Morgan Bay Zendo was it was a lot of work because you had to spend all your Saturdays working for the on the buildings that were going up and so on. So I was kind of immersed in the work as well. And
So
then I
if you weren't working on koans at that point, what was your zazen technique? Was it just following your
well
breaths?
I worked on I kept usually always kept the Mu Koan as a basic foundational koan,
Uh
and
huh.
I've always kept that. As Aiken Roshi, I gave a talk on this a week ago.
Hmm.
on an online group, and I said that I follow what Aiken Roshi said. You start with the Mu Koan, you never drop it. It's there with you all your life, and
Hmm.
if it's embedded in your bones, then you return to it to refocus your mind and recharge yourself
Hmm.
again and again. That's what I would do. I
Hmm.
would always use it as a way of recharging my energies and to get that one mindedness, that single mind, one focused mind. So the Koan Mu is lifelong. It's for me. It's a lifelong practice. As an Aiken Roshi, you can go through all the koans, but you come back to Mu. And he
Hmm.
quoted Yamada Roshi as saying that Yamada himself would come back to it all the time as the foundational koan.
Do you ever meet Yamada or Soen Roshi or anyone else?
Yes, we went on a 3 month. Kaplo invited me to go with him on a 3 month pilgrimage to India and to Japan,
Hmm.
and we spent 6 weeks in Japan. And I had dinner a couple of times with Yamada Roshi, and also with other people from Yasutani's group. But Yasutani never invited him to. This was after the break. It
Okay.
was 1970, so Yasutani very deliberately did not invite him to
Hmm.
contact him or to get together with him.
Hmm.
So the break was permanent break. I think he went to Japan. Well, he has Philip Kapleau also had a wife there, Delancey, and also had a child. So he had to see about taking care of them,
Hmm.
and they moved to Toronto, Canada. Afterwards, she was native of Toronto, Canada. So there were things going on in his life too. So we went back. When we returned, well, anyhow, we spent. It was visiting monasteries, and we had other teachers we met besides Yamada
Hmm.
and Roshi, and then in India met quite a few people. Kirpal Singh was a
Hmm.
teacher of some friends of mine, and we went up to meet the Dalai Lama in McLeod Ganji and Dharamsala, and then we went up to Darjeeling, East
Did you actually have
Bengal.
an audience with the Dalai Lama?
No, we had an audience with his assistant, chief assistant at the time.
Uh-huh.
He said they said that he was ill and would have liked to see us, but he couldn't. He was not feeling well.
Hmm.
But we did stay for a gathering. They invited us to stay for a gathering of monks. There were something like 300 Tibetan monks coming to do a special chanting. It
Hmm.
was actually an Om chanting, and it was an all-day Om chanting,
Hmm.
and invited us to have some soup and tea with them, mostly tea. What we call soup, they call tea. So we had that, and that was a wonderful time. We spent a week there, and
Hmm.
then went to Old Delhi, New Delhi, and Old Delhi. Saw Kirpal Singh, spent a day with him, and he was a Sikh teacher, Sikh,
Hmm.
and we went on to Kalimpong and Darjeeling and spent some time up there.
Hmm.
So yeah, so then we met Philip Kapleau, and we met in. I think we took a plane to Thailand and met him there, and went on from there to Japan.
Hmm. And you met Soen Roshi directly?
Uh, yes, I think we met him there. Yes, we did. We met him in Japan. We went to
Huh.
see him.
What was he like?
Um, he was he was a congenial guy, very informal, easy to
Hmm.
talk to.
Is this before or after his accident? Do you know?
I think it was before.
Okay.
We went up to a monastery up north of Obama, Japan, where Philip Kapleau had spent several years and several 3 month cycles with him. And it was Yasutani Roshi's teacher, um,
Harada Roshi?
Harada Roshi. Yes, we met Harada, and we spent time with. Well, we didn't spend. No, Harada had passed away, and we spent time with his designated heir, and who had a temple of his own, and we spent time with him.
Uh-huh.
And
Is that Tangan Roshi?
yes, Tangen Roshi. Yes,
Uh-huh. And what
yeah.
what was your impression of him?
Oh, he's a wonderful person. as an example, when I was sleeping and we had on the floor. I got up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, and I found him sitting outside of our room, sitting in full lotus, and I was struck with this. It was like he was trying to help us, and then I had a little incident. Was a major one. We had little tea ceremony together, a couple of them, and then one time I went out to get a drink of water, just to illustrate his focus of his mind. I was pouring water from a little pitcher on an outside fountain, and I'm reaching in and pouring it, and on each hand, and I had just been at the toilet, and he had come out and looked, and then he came over and says, Hugh, no, 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 no. I said, what did I do wrong? And he says, here, this is what you do. And they put it in a dip. 1/3 of that little cup you put into the left hand, then you switch, you put 1/3 into the other hand, and then you bow, and you let the rest, like that, dribble down the rest, your two hands together as you're bowing. So there's a very good illustration of treating water. You could say it's all like holy water, sacred water, with great respect. He really taught that lesson very, not in any symbolic or verbal way, just illustrated it with the way you do it. This is what you do. And he impressed it so deeply on my mind. I ever after respected water. And I gave a couple of talks on that to the Rochester Zen, though. Philip Capital liked the story. He kept asking me to repeat whenever people weren't using the water in a good way.
I'm curious, what do you think Capello's motivation was to come to America and start teaching when he wasn't finished? Was he just anxious to get going, or?
Well, there's one very good reason. He told me himself. There was trying to remember his name. There was a man who and his wife, the man who founded the Xerox copying process. And he was a very wealthy man, and he also, his wife was a Vedanta follower, and they had a group of 30 or 40 Vedantists from around Rochester, and they had a house, and they decided they would invite Philip Capello because they read the Three Pillars of Zen, were very, very impressed with it. So they wrote him a letter to invite him over, and that they would give him wouldn't call it a salary, but a stipend, a monthly stipend to live on, and money he could send back to his wife. And under those circumstances, he came to Rochester, and he had an instant group, Vedantist group, but they were willing to follow the Zen tradition, some of them, not all of them. And that's when I joined them. They were still Vedantists in the group. And so his invitation was fortuitous for him, and probably for Rochester, very fortuitous. And his support was significant. He did get a good stipend that supported him, and that he could send the money back and keep his wife afloat, and allow her give passage to Toronto, Canada with his daughter and so on. Their house, I guess, was rented in Japan. So so it's not a complex story. I think the Rochester group has sort of, I think, have come up with their own formulation, and they've never asked me what the full story is. But if they ever did, I would tell them this is exactly what happened. And also the break with Yasutani. They were never there. None of the group who's in Rochester now were there at the time, since I was the only one, besides the Vedantist group. So so that's without the funds provided by this multimillionaire, it could not have taken place.
Interesting. What do you think Capello's strongest points as a teacher were? Like, what were his greatest strengths as a teacher and community leader?
Well, I'll tell you this. I'd say that I had a bit of a hand in it because he was using me as a kind of sounding board
Hmm.
because he wanted to reach younger people.
Hmm.
And he would ask what they're doing, and because I was used to the New York scene and
Hmm.
how the retreats went there, and I would suggest that we would do when actually this multimillionaire and his wife stopped giving any funds after they had a break with Philip Kapleau.
Hmm.
They there was no more funds, so we started to give retreats and opened it to everybody and just charged $50 to $100 for a retreat, and we would hold it in country centers and so on, and have weekend retreats at the building we had, and he was trying to reach, and we had a lot of young people coming. I think because of the Vietnam War, we had about 15 come out of Florida, St. Petersburg College, I think,
Hmm.
and they would have. They were very enthused, deeply involved, wanted to get deeply involved, and other young people began to arrive, and he would ask me to kind of oversee them, and we had a bad fire at 7 Arnold Park. We had moved there, and he asked me to be sure to oversee all the young people and to set up things for them because he
Hmm.
was doing a lot of writing at the time and also going to different places to give talks. And so I was kind of asked to oversee. So I was kind of used to supervising from work and other paths. So we set up a residence program,
Hmm.
and we had 20 to 30 residents there, and we people would sleep in the basement or sleep in the garage or whatever we could set up. So he began. I think his strengths lay in that he was willing to reach out and work with young people. I think that was his greatest strength.
Hmm.
To answer your question, I don't think he was superbly good with older people, um, but he was not bad. I mean, there were people, some older people from the Vedantas group stayed on, and they were impressed with him and helped out. But I think the young people, especially, were very enthused, and I think he got. You could say, to my mind, his ego got started to get blown up with this attention that he was receiving.
Hmm.
And it's one of the things that I sort of held against him is he was too overly, uh, you know, he was overly drawn into remarks that sort of built him up.
Hmm.
Giving him more, I think, attention that and was warranted, and saying how wonderful a person he was,
Hmm.
and a lot of people, young people, some of them really knew how to stroke his ego, and I don't think that was good for him.
Hmm.
So
Was there any public acknowledgement? So he never received Dharma transmission. Is that correct?
that's right. Yeah, I never did.
Did
No.
he, did he? Did you ever see him claim otherwise, or was it implied otherwise? Or
Well, he implied it for quite a while. When he was forced to, Yamada Roshi, in response to one of the students who was upset at him for something or other, sent a request to Yamada Roshi in Japan. Could you tell us exactly what Philip Kapleau's achievements were in terms of the practice? And he
Hmm.
sent back quite a detailed letter and said, no, you don't have, Kapleau does not have Dharma transmission, and
Hmm.
so on. He's not acknowledged by Yasutani as a teacher, and so on. So Kapleau had to admit to that.
Hmm.
So what he set up was really, you could call it Kapleau Zen. It was not. It was based upon himself. As he was, I'm trying to remember the term. He was self. There's a term that's sometimes used. He was a self vindicated teacher, a self
Hmm. Yeah.
esteemed teacher.
Self-acknowledged.
Yes, the
Yeah.
word.
Yeah.
He's a self acknowledged teacher.
Yeah. And were you part of the community when the Yamada's letter arrived,
Uh,
or were you
I,
already gone at that point?
let's see. I think it. Yeah, I had gone, and somebody sent me on a copy of the letter, and I said, "Yeah, this is exactly what happened." I sent back, but as far as I know, he never that letter never circulated beyond a couple of people. So,
Yeah. Interesting.
but
Yeah.
but I think, his strengths were there. As I said, his strengths were with young people, and he was. I'm. I would, I'd question somebody's right to give Dharma transmission to students if he doesn't have it himself. So that's an ethical issue that they have to face themselves.
So your next teacher was Walter Norwick, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And
Well,
was he formerly a Rinzai teacher or what?
yes, he was a student in Japan of a Rinzai tradition,
Uh huh.
and
And was he given Dharma transmission? Do you
I
know?
think, and he was not given Dharma transmission either. So,
Okay.
because we had a Morinaga Roshi came to visit one time, and I had a retreat at Princeton with him, and I asked him that, and he says no, he wasn't, because you need, after completing your koans and getting Inca, you need 14 years
Uh huh.
of additional study before you're given the right to teach.
I see. So he had Inca though.
Well, not quite, because
Oh.
according to Morinaga, the true Inca,
Uh huh.
a true Inca took that 14-year period
Yeah.
after
I
you
think
completed your studies.
legalistically in Rinzai, I think there's a difference between Inca and Shike.
Yeah.
Inca just means you finished the practice. Shike is the authorization to teach. I
Yes. Well,
understand.
that may have been it.
Yeah.
I can't remember the terminology, but
Was he more Naga student?
no, Morinaga was his Dharma brother,
Okay.
and his teacher was. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting. We
Hmm.
have his ashes in there at their main Morgan Bay Zendo, but
Hmm.
I'm forgetting his name now. But he was the head of the temple in Tokyo, or no, Kyoto,
Hmm.
the Rinzai temple, which was quite a substantial temple with a lot of sub temples in it.
Was this
And
Moshinji or
oh yes, I think that was it. Yeah.
yeah?
Uh,
And how was Walter as a teacher?
well, it's a curious thing that I came upon the situation. It was only like 2 or 3 years.
Hmm.
There was an issue with his abuse, some abuses that had gone on, and
Hmm.
students were leaving because of that.
Is this sleeping
And
with students?
yeah, and
Uh-huh.
so he then decided. This was, I think, after 3 years I was with him. He decided to become focus entirely on his music. So
Okay.
he was a superb musician, and
Hmm.
when he was in Japan, he taught at a women's college, a Japanese women's college, taught music, and even though he was staying in the monastery, and his background was Juilliard. He had a strong musical background. Opera was his love of his life, and so he set up a little opera company called the Surrey Opera Company.
Hmm.
And I found that he was a wonderful teacher in music. I would join. He asked me to join the chorus, which I did,
Hmm.
and you could sing. Of course, you didn't have to know Russian or German or whatever. You would just kind of go along with 30 or 40 other people and read the notes and sing. But he was on, he was recognized in Russia and St. Petersburg for his prowess, and he would give, I think, recitals there, and also in Georgia and Tbilisi. And of course, would go back to Japan several times and give concerts there.
Hmm.
So that's where he put all of his energy before, and we became friends, at that time, as more like friends through music,
Hmm.
and we related to Jan Willem van de Wetering, the Dutch writer. He broke from him at that time as well and moved to 10 miles away and
Oh, so
become.
he was one of Norwick's students as well.
Yes, he was. Yeah,
Oh, I didn't realize that.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And I
I
assume
think.
you've read all those books like Empty Mirror and
Yeah,
all
those
that.
were all.
Yeah,
One of them was strictly from his relationship with Walter. Actually,
I
I think
see.
the Empty
Yeah.
Mirror.
Um, so you were so after he stopped teaching, or maybe
Yeah.
gradually faded out from teaching. What was your relation to Zen at that point?
Well, I invited because our Zendo was needed to be rebuilt as a Morgan Bay Zendo. Walter had basically divorced himself from it, even though we were, quarter mile away.
Hmm.
And his land that he had given. But his music, he was so singularly involved with his music barn and his music that he just said, Hugh, just, form your own groups and do your own thing.
Hmm.
It's up to you.
Hmm.
So I invited, first of all, Ruben Habito was a Christian Zen teacher, and had written several books on Zen and been in Japan for 20 years and
Hmm.
was Yamada Roshi's student and had been given the right to teach. So
Hmm.
I invited him to come to lead retreats, which he did.
He was in Texas at this point, or
Yeah, he was still
yeah.
in Dallas, Texas. So he brought a group every year for several years,
Hmm.
a dozen or so students from there, and they would practice. They sat for I think 5-day retreats with us, 5 or 7 day retreats. So
Hmm.
he was very inspirational. I went through some koan study with him,
Hmm.
and then he couldn't come on a regular basis, and we had a friend, Stuart Lax, who had moved on to join
San Francisco Zen Center.
a Chan Center down in
Oh,
New
okay.
York.
Oh, Stuart Locks. Okay, yeah.
Yes, so Stuart
Hmm.
Stuart was involved, had moved at that time back to New York, and he had become a student of Shifu Shengyan.
Hmm.
And Shifu, of course, means teacher, and
Right.
Shengyan. And so I would go down there, inspired by that. I would go down there, and we had retreat. My wife would come with me. We'd have retreats there, number of retreats. Then I invited him up to Morgan Bay Zendo to guide retreats.
Hmm.
We put out a book called one of his retreats there called Zen, the Zen ox herding pictures at Morgan Bay, which became kind of popular.
Huh, yeah,
And
I think I've might even known
yeah,
that actually. Yeah.
and so that was during one of our retreats. So he'd come regularly, and
What did you think of Chinese Chan versus Japanese Zen?
oh, it was a great eye opener to me. Actually, strangely enough, Philip Kapleau began to give me I think he was trying to break me from my Japanese obsessions, and he would give me books on Suyun and other Chinese Zen masters. So he kind of led me toward this.
Hmm.
And Shifu was a wonderful and very inspiring person, and he was the one that told me. I asked for, in my personal talks with him, and he would say, something's on your mind. I said, well, I was raised as a Catholic, and how would Zen Chan Buddhism regard Christ and Christ and Mary? I said they were sort of fundamental to my youth and growing up. And he says, oh, don't try to separate yourself from them. Consider them as inspiring bodhisattvas to help you on your path.
Hmm.
So that was a
That's good.
great eye opener to me. It was just this easy, much more accommodating. With the Japanese, you felt you had to make these decisions separate, but the Chinese just would say no, incorporate them. And when I was in meeting with some monks up in India, I asked the same question, and they said, "Oh, just regard their great bodhisattvas to help you. Don't separate yourself from them. Just consider them helping bodhisattvas."
Hmm. And that's fascinating. So, kind of like vibe wise and sociologically, did you notice the difference between Japanese Zen and Chinese Chan? And for example, do you know Jeff Shore, who lives in Japan now? Do you know of him?
Yeah, yeah, I remember Jeff. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So he was telling an anecdote in a talk I heard of his where he went to Japan for a retreat, and he was saying, and he was sitting there, and their little old man came in like after the sitting had started and sat in one place, didn't like it, got up and like sat in another place and like adjusted himself and was wearing a hat. And at first, his Japanese Zen trainee, he's like, what? What's this guy doing? This horrible. And turns out that was like a very senior officer in the Chinese monastery, and it just I think he made him realize that like kind of the strictness and uptightness of his Zen practice was maybe more cultural than inherent.
yeah.
So
I
like,
think
you
I
know,
think you're that's a good illustration.
Hmm.
The Chan was just much more. Um, well, it was a Chan that also practiced. Um, Unlike in Japan, where this severed the devotional
Hmm.
practice from the Zen tradition,
Hmm.
uh, China didn't do that. They really did Pure Land practice and Chan together.
Yeah.
So they'd have, and it's a great thing. They'd have these bodhisattvas on the altar. You'd go
Right.
in, and during, if it's Zen retreat, they just turn the whole thing around. The altar was on wheels,
Hmm.
and it was a Bodhidharma scroll, and so you were and a very simple altar. So just say, okay, now that's devotional for the regular members who
Hmm.
come from around New York, the Chinese enclave there, and they would come in and of course support the center, but their practice, as he said, as Shifu Shangyin says, their practice is mostly devotional practice. And
Hmm.
here now we're doing Chan, which is just pure one-pointed direct practice. So
Hmm.
but they were never seen as two different practices. They were incorporated together.
Did you do any koans with him?
Yes, I did. He preferred to use the word Wu, the Wu koan, rather than the Mu koan, but it's the same
Hmm.
koan. It's on the same tradition. In Chinese, you say Wu, W-U, and in Japanese is M, Mu. So yes, I'd work with him on that.
Uh-huh. And was that different than, other than the
Um,
pronunciation, was the methodology or?
well, he had a very diverse scholarly as well as practice and Chan practice. So
Hmm.
he was able to answer other questions I would have, about
Hmm.
the traditions, about the history, and he was very open. At that time, everything he said made total sense to me. So it
Hmm.
wasn't. It was more of the sense that he felt that you really had to have a cultural, devotional Zen, Chan all together. You didn't say this is Zen, which we had in Rochester as well. Well,
Hmm.
this is Zen, and that's devotional, it's separate. He
Hmm.
would just say, no, they're all work together, and sometimes you need the devotional, and sometimes you need the Zen. You have to see them as cooperative, that they cooperate together, and the cultural as well. So I thought his teaching was a huge help to me in
Hmm.
my practice. It helped to bring the questions about culture,
Hmm.
history, and they helped to coalesce these diverse strands. So my body was not arguing with
Hmm.
this is right and this is wrong. It's just you're just sort of accepting. It's more like an absorbing into the bones, and I think that's what Mu and Wu became more absorbed into the bones of my
Hmm.
body and mind, not and that other things could be done at the same time. That I could do other practices at the same time. Sometimes images could be used. We talked about using the sun, for instance, as a focus point, and he was all right with that.
Hmm.
That as the sun was there, but you could focus on the sun to help you get your mind focused, so that you didn't just dive in the practice, but that it was the sun became a way of getting the mind focused. It's circular and so on, or the moon, sun or the moon, but he liked the sun. So I used the sun image quite a bit to help keep my focus through the day and work and in all of that way, and sort of to walk within that sort of sense of the solar energy. And
Hmm.
of course, later on, I found that that's a big part of the Japanese tradition too. Is of course the sun. The sun is a major part of the
Yeah. I,
some of the
I
practices.
I read it. I forget what it was. It was a very early Zen text. It was one of those that they found in the
Yeah,
Duanghang caves or whatever.
yeah,
And yeah, and an early Zen technique. I mean, this is, 16, 1800s. I mean, sorry, 600 or 700 AD. And they would actually visualize the sunset or sunrise or something like that.
yeah. That was actually I did find early references to that in older texts.
Uh-huh.
that the sun was used in stories by the Buddha, giving a woman who was imprisoned, a former king's wife who had been imprisoned for something or other, and she would ask messengers to ask the Buddha what to do, and he would say, look at the sun as it's rising, or look at the sun as it's going down. Use the image to help you focus your mind and break it out of the sorrow that you're feeling. So this is called, the great sun Buddha Dainichi Nyorai in Japan. So Dainichi, very, very major. And I do think that we have to, I think in the future, Zen should try to incorporate these images, to make for a more wholesome practice. So,
Hmm.
and not to kind of divorce one from the other, but that the images can help you, sun images can help you to focus the mind and enter into a deeper, practice with the koan.
Hmm. I'm curious, did you ever run into Edo Shimano after he became a teacher and was at
Yes,
the, at the,
yes, yes, I did. I wrote to him after I left Caplo and asked uh, if I could consider joining him
uh-huh,
uh, at Daibori. I can't
yeah,
remember now.
yeah,
Uh,
Daibatsu, Dai, yeah,
Daibotsu.
yeah,
And I went there to meet him,
hmm,
and he said he would give me a place to stay with my wife and son, and we could join in and be part of that his group there. And
hmm,
remembered me very vividly. He said
hmm,
and thought I had made a good decision. But then I thought about it very carefully, and he said we do need monastics here, and you would be perfect. And then month I said, well, I have to give it some time because I have to earn a living
hmm.
for the family and so on. And then after about a month, and yeah, and my wife didn't really cotton to him that much. He did not have a good reputation with women.
So he was
So,
already known to kind of be a predator a little bit.
well, yes, I knew that. I had a former girlfriend who had told me that years before that, and then my
Uh-huh,
wife told me, "Watch out, he's
uh-huh,
not, he's not, he's not really trustworthy." But
uh-huh,
that wasn't that. The main reason was that I just didn't feel. I thought I would been practicing now for 9 very intense years, and
uh-huh,
I needed a break for a while,
uh-huh,
and and that's when I moved to Maine.
uh-huh. Do you know Lawrence Shainberg? The book Ambivalent Zen? Are you familiar with?
The name is very familiar. I
Okay,
don't know if I know him or not.
okay. I just didn't know if you ran in those circles.
And yet there were so many people out of the Rochester group and the New York group that I know.
Yeah.
I
How
kind of
about
remember his name.
Dido Lori in Mount Tremper, New York? Did you ever cross
I
his path?
think I met him out on the West Coast years
Yeah.
ago when I was there. I visited I spent a day with Tangen, no,
Okay.
Wasn't
Uh-huh.
Taisan Shimano, what is called Taisan. It became the Roshi out there in Los Angeles.
Oh, Maizumi.
Taisan Maizumi.
Yeah.
I spent some time with him.
Hmm. Great.
And yes, that's when I met quite a few of the group then
Hmm.
as a group.
Great. I think I want to respect your time. I have a bunch of other questions, but maybe we could do a part two someday. We could wrap up now and then pick it up.
Yeah, if you
Okay.
want to, we could
Yeah.
certainly arrange to have another. I'm
Okay.
quite open to having another round and lots of things that could be explored. So we
Okay.
can
Great.
do that.
Well, I very much appreciate your time. Thank you so much
Okay. Okay,
for
thank you.
sharing. It was fascinating hearing a lot about these early Zen days. So,
Yeah.
uh
Yes, I may be the only witness to some of this, the way
right.
people are passing away.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Okay. Take
Talk to you
care.
soon. Bye.
Bye now.